Greetings, students. Here's our next exciting art project to work on from home. This one looks really cool. This is something I made out of just using paper and markers and cutting out a tissue box, because some of these tissue boxes have really cool patterns and designs on them, and I like cutting them out and using them. And something you'll notice that a lot of that cardboard for the tissue boxes are waxed, so they have a reflective quality to them. So when you hang this on the wall, the paper circles won't be reflective and the tissue box pieces will. So it's kind of cool to play around with some light while you're making your art. But let's go ahead and see how we got to this point. Excuse me. First thing I'm going to do is 2 sheets of white paper, and this could be computer paper, no big deal. And a tissue box that I've broken down and kind of cut into strips. It's cool, got a cool little green and blue floral pattern on it. So I'm cutting that out into little strips, like 4-inch strips. I've got a roll of tape. This is going to be a stencil that I'm going to use. A pair of scissors, pencil, a dark Sharpie marker, black permanent marker, whichever, glue stick, and some markers. Could use crayons or colored pencils. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay my tape roll flat on the piece of paper and use my black Sharpie to basically, I'm just going to hold the tape down as hard as I can, and I'm going to trace the inside of that circle. Okay, so hold down the tape roll and trace the inside of the tape roll, and I'm going to do that 4 different times. Okay, that way I end up with 4 perfect circle stencils. Okay. So, and then what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start coloring in the circles, and I'm going to alternate between colors. I'm also going to try different patterns. So the one on the left is solid, the one to the top left is kind of zigzaggy, the bottom right is kind of wavy, and then the one to the far right is spirally. Okay, and then just use corresponding colors. This is kind of like a mint berry crunch kind of color combination. Just going from purple to green, and then add in some hot orange to kind of make everything pop. And I think it's cool how when my lines overlap, they look a little like it bled a little bit and it kind of blended. So I like how that effect turned out. So once I've got my 4 circles kind of colored in and figured out, I'm actually going to cut them out, but to make it easier, I don't cut them out one at a time. I would cut each circle into its own section, and then all you have to do is you hold the piece of paper in your hand, and with your scissors can just stay stationary. You know, you don't have to move your scissors. Just keep your scissors stationary and just turn the paper as you're cutting. You know, so you don't have to move your scissors. Just keep your scissors steady and then just turn that piece of paper, and that's the way you can kind of go about that. So once I've done that, I've got 4 of my circles colored and cut out as best as I can. Next thing I'm going to do is grab a clean sheet of white paper, and I'm going to start arranging these circles in a way that I think looks interesting. They could overlap, they could be in the corners, they could be in the center, just kind of whatever you want. But for me, I kind of chose this kind of stair-steppy kind of look, almost like planets like floating in outer space. And you can do this on black paper if you want to. I just kind of thought of that. If you want to do like a space scene with planets, you could do this with black paper, and that'd be just as fine. And I'm going to glue down those circles, you know, in that pattern that I like, that little stair-step kind of pattern. And then I'm just going to kind of start randomly gluing down strips of the tissue box, you know, those patterns. So the straight lines of the tissue box really contrast with the round orb shapes that I've cut out of paper. And if you notice on the left-hand side, I've got these little, if you kind of clip the corner of each little strip of the tissue box, kind of zigzag pattern, you end up with all these tiny little triangles. And the triangles kind of help break up, you know, sometimes those straight blocks of the tissue box can be kind of boring, but those nice tiny little triangles really break everything up and kind of give it a more visual, dynamic look to it. Okay, and then so we're back at our final piece. So you're really using that tape roll to make a stencil of a perfect circle. You color those circles in, cut them out, and then arrange them on a fresh sheet of paper. And same thing with the tissue box, cut out strips, work with the patterns, work with the triangles, and when you glue it all down and you put it all together and you look at it, it's a great combination of the stability of the lines, but the dynamics of the circles and the color. So I really like how this one turned out. If you guys enjoyed this one, leave me some comments, and until then, I'll see you next time.